Join the Power Trip Zach Halverson on Wednesday the 27th at B52 Burgers and Brew in Inver Grove Heights for a Wild watch party. Get there at 6 p.m. to watch your Wild in action and sign up for your chance to qualify for first-round playoff tickets next year. Get the full details now at KFAN.com. Keep your calendar.
Waiting for the arrival of the head coach of the soon-to-be big game world champion Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell, or as he's affectionately called, KOC. One of the topics he'll address, I'm sure, would be injury situations. It seems like Sam Darnold was banged up again. I don't know if it was foot and arm and wrist or the knee bones attached to the shin bone. And then Ivan Pace went out as well, right, early in the game, and he did not return. And it seemed like he got knocked down and did the splits or something.
And our new left tackle.
And our left tackle.
Cam Robinson.
Exactly. So
the Darnold one looked like it was the exact same injury he had the week before. Yeah. I think it just probably wasn't fully healed. So, how much we'll find out. I mean, I'm sure KOC will address it, but how much they know at this point remains to be seen. One other injury note, Tenneby, would be a different sport, but here locally, Kaprizov did not play, but we do think, is it sort of considered, we think, a day-to-day kind of a thing? It's not he avoided
serious?
Major injury, okay. And he did practice at morning skate today. They obviously have a big one, two best teams in the NHL tonight, Jets and Wild at XL Under Center. So he practiced today. Coach officially listing him as a game-time decision. Also listing your guy, Mardet Husnadinov, as a game-time decision. But Kaprizov did skate in line rushes today. Husnadinov did not. So that's usually an indication of who's playing and who's not playing.
Be nice if it's nice to avoid injury for a serious injury for Kaprizov.
Yes.
That is indeed.
When you see knee to knee and then he's sitting out a game, it's hard not to think of the worst. So appears as if it's mostly best case scenario.
Sorry.
Did you want to do 5 questions?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's do 5 questions. Yeah.
Time now for 5 questions. Well, actually 3, but 5 sounds like more than 4. Question number 1.
It's now time to take an in-depth look at the welfare of the wolves.
Well, the Wolves were much more competitive, but ended up falling 107-105 yesterday in Boston. Anthony Edwards scored 28 points. Minnesota did hold Boston to its lowest point total all season. Common, your guy Rob Dillingham had his best game of the season, scoring 14 points on 6 of 10 shooting. Common, would you consider yesterday's Wolves loss to be a moral victory? So the Wolves are playing one of the best teams in the Boston Celtics. They had been struggling going in. They do lose, but played better than they had, so we consider that a moral victory.
You don't have to go deep down into it. I don't think any of us are into moral victories. I will say, have you ever met a family that's perfect, Tenneby?
No.
That was the quote from, I think, Julius Randle. Have you ever met a family that's perfect? Going back to the game before, we were playing, who did we lose to where the game before we lost?
Toronto?
Yeah, Toronto. That was the one where Gobert's demanding the ball. Late in the game on the line, Gobert's demanding the ball. He's got a mismatch down low. Randle doesn't throw it to him. Then Gobert just slowly leaves the lane, gets a 3-second violation. Then he makes a careless foul where he just throws a hip into somebody. Ants all over Gobert going, what are you doing? Then again, I think the last possession, maybe Randle throws the ball as hard as he can to Gobert, and it glances off his hand, and everybody surmises that he was doing that purposely. You want the ball? Here it is. Well, then they had I think it was one of those closed-door meetings, players only. They talked it over, and everybody is Ducky and Bunny again with each other. And they said, you're going to see a different team against the Celtics. And they only lost by 2 to the Celts. It was a game that, it hung in the balance. But now they're 8-8. And it's interesting, Tenneby. At 8-8, it's still early. Now, again, we're going to be about a quarter of the way through the season here. Well, pretty quick, right? It's 16 games, 20 is about that quarter pull. You compare the 2 winner teams. I think a lot was expected of the Wolves, even though that they traded Bodega Cat. I think most people said, well, hey, yeah, Bodega, we lose him, but we still got size inside. Julius Randle's a 2-time, 3-time NBA or All-Star, whatever. Everybody likes Bogdanovich. What's his name? DiVincenzo. They like him. So we're going to be fine. We're not going to miss a beat. We had to make the trade because we needed to clear salary cap space. We can't be with the luxury tax and the aprons and all of that. And it just hasn't gone very well so far. They've had their moments. They've had some decent games. But when you're 8-8, when you're coming off a Western Conference Finals, I think people were expecting. And again, I'm sure there's still the Wolves apologists are out there talking about, well, just give them some more time to gel. Need some more time to gel. Well, how much time? We're almost at the quarter point of the season. And then you have your Wild Club, which we talked about extensively, before the break, where that was a team that I think most people thought if we get to be 500, be a good season. And now we're 12-3-3. Is that the record still?
They lost in a shootout Saturday at Calgary without Kaprizov in the lineup. So they are now 12-3-4. 12-3-4. So still exceeding expectations, at least by what people thought. So we'll see. I don't know if. I guess I'll still have to trust the people the people that I trust, that I think understand the game. Those in the basketball community say, don't panic yet. And this is a good trade. Randall's going to be good. And there are those that are down on Bodega Cat because of defense and whining and this and that. I guess I liked him a little bit better than most people. And I do think that run last year was due in large part to, I think he was a leader on that team, and it meant more to him because he'd been there this entire time. He'd suffered some playoff losses in seasons where they didn't make the playoffs, and whether they get back to playing at the level they were last year remains to be seen. I do like, though, that they finally played Dillingham. So, I mean, the hand has been forced by the coach, I think, because Conley's been out, 3 games, and his backup, what's his name? Nikhil Walker, whoever it is, he's not played particularly well either. And then Dillingham, play your young guys. The hell? I mean, you're 8-8 anyways. I don't know what you're waiting for. So, we'll see how it goes. I'm not convinced they're going to be better than last year, but it remains to be seen.
Question number 2. It's time now for the lowdown in Dinkytown.
The Gophers football team took Penn State, number 4 in the nation, to the wire, but they lost by a point, 26-25, Saturday at Huntington Bank Stadium. The Gophers blocked a punt and also blocked a field goal and returned it for 2. Daniel Jackson caught 6 passes for 90 yards. Max Brosner completed 15-23 for 175, but also threw an interception and lost a fumble. Common, would you consider Saturday's Gophers loss to be a moral victory?
I'm not into moral victories. I don't think the coach is either, though I do believe the head coach and the team, he said there were a lot of tears in that locker room. I would think the head coach is still pleased with the effort. That is the number 4 team in the country, and Penn State is really, really good. That was their game to win. Yep. I watched the entire game. That was in their back pocket. They played as well as Penn State did, or even better, and they had the miscues. And then Chip Scoggins, columnist, Fish Wrap Factory. Are we going to just ride this, or how do you want to do this? With the coach, do we want to break again and come back, or do we want to just wait it out now? What do you think?
Let's wait 2 minutes.
Okay. So Chip Scoggins, who's a columnist for the Fish Wrap Factory West Side, we text and talk more than most people know. He was really, he thought Fleck blundered when he tried the little trick play when they were going to try to throw to the 350-pound left tackle.
Yeah.
Didn't work out. He says, nope. The play call was great. We just didn't execute. He would do it again, I think is what the coach said. I do think that, again, if it happens, it's a great play. If it doesn't, then you look foolish. You have other playmakers on the team in that situation. I don't know if that's where you want to call that play, but sometimes that's when those plays work, right? And you saw what Penn State did. They went for the Gophers held Penn State 1 of 11 on 3rd downs in that game. But in that last drive, they gave up 3 4th downs. Penn State had 4th and whatever.
Including their trick play.
Including their trick play, which was the fake punt, and the coach, whose name escapes me, is it Franklin? Is that the head coach for Penn State? He said when we looked at what the Gophers had basically their punt coverage team out. And so they knew that would be the time to call it to work. They got, I think, like 30-plus yards on the play, and that was basically what locked it up for them. So, yeah, again, if you want to go with more of it, I just think it does show progress with the program. I thought, and I'm not suggesting that now we're going to be this football power and we're going to start being in the top 25 rankings and playing for natties, but at least you did give a...
It's frustrating, though, that you saw that team against Penn State, and then you saw a different team against Rutgers.
That's correct. That is correct. So that's still the problem with the team, the inconsistencies. We'll break. We'll come back. Head coach after this.
Tune in at 9 to noon every Tuesday as PA broadcast live from TCO to talk all things purple. TCO Tuesdays are powered by Sioux Cup Manufacturing.
Couple 13-14 pass common man program. All right. Taking a break when we did tend to be ended up being a wise decision, we believe. A head coach has not started his weekly day after the game news conference. He should be starting shortly, and we'll carry that for you in its entirety. For those that are down on the Vikings, and I continue to get text messages from people that are, you know what I tell people tend to be? Get off and stay off. How about this one? This is from our Bradshaw and Bryant KFAN Hala hotline or text line at 64686. Vikings would lose to the Eagles by 40. I have no doubt in my mind. Here's KOC.
I was very proud of our team, the way we responded, and to have a 3-game road stretch like that coming off of a Sunday night, our last home game being Sunday night, and then into that stretch. So proud of our team, to win 5 in a row, lose 2 games in a matter of 5 days, and then come back and win 4 in a row. I think it speaks to the guys in our locker room and kind of where we're at. But we've got to continue to improve. A lot of things we can improve on from yesterday, and I think the Arizona Cardinals are a really good football team, and we're going to have to play well. Fortunate to be back at home for the next 3 and can't wait to get to play back in front of our fans. Really don't have a lot of injury updates at this time. Ivan Pace, Cam Robinson, and Jay Ward are kind of all in evaluation mode right now. Don't have any updates on timetables or availability for this week quite yet, but I will keep you guys posted, and I'm sure Dr. Phillips will have some things to say as well.
With Cam Robinson, is that the same underwear foot part of your turn a couple weeks ago?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, same foot. I'm pretty confident that it's very similar, and he was able to work through it. So we'll see how he responds.
Kevin, when Justin makes everyone around him better, like yesterday, how does he handle it? He's not getting the ball, but he impacts that game so much.
Yeah, he's one of the most competitive people I've ever been around. He's never met any of these coverages and plans for him that we've played against. Like the outcome of him not having a major impact on the game is really not a possibility in his mind. I know he was very excited for Jordan and TJ and obviously for us to be able to, get Aaron over that 100-yard threshold and Sam to play really well. But ultimately, as many times as I tell him, hey, you had 60, 70 yards in penalties that they had to hold and grab and do all the things to try to limit your impact, even within their coverage plan. He still wants to have an impact, and it's my job to try to find ways to, create as many footballs on any given Sunday as I possibly can to get everybody touches. It's easier said than done sometimes, but I was, the way we moved it, and I think we were pretty explosive yesterday. But yeah, definitely something that I want to make sure he always feels like he's a major priority because, anytime he steps on the field, I think he's the best player on the field.
Coach, just building off of that, I know you obviously talked about Jordan last night, but just after watching the film and everything, can you just talk about the impact that he made and if there was anything that you hadn't noticed live about just his performance?
I would just say that I thought he could have a similar type of day if he was able to play 4 quarters in Tennessee, and probably would have got a couple significant looks in that second half. And kind of fast forwarding to this week, just the way he went about preparing, both mentally and then physically getting ready to roll. He just felt like he had that kind of look in his eye all week long, and I thought he impacted the game, in a lot of different ways. He clearly had the long catch, kind of playing through contact before the ball arrived there and still making the play, so we didn't have to rely on getting the call there. The first third down in the game, 3rd and 8, they're kind of pushing coverage over that way, and he's able to kind of get through some contact from the flat defender, physical play, and catch the curl route for a first down. And then the big play kind of starting out the second half, kind of similar look to a play we had where we turned it over against Indianapolis, and we'd kind of been waiting to pick our spots for the right time to maybe see if we could get that look for him, and just the way he kind of set that higher angle, and Sam trusting him and dropping that ball in there, and then the catch and run afterwards I thought was massively impressive, and other than the fact that he got caught, but yeah, his impact, Jordan knows exactly what he is in our offense, which is one of our major impact players, and TJ Hawkinson as well with some massive plays there to help us secure the victory.
Kevin, you mentioned the 3-game swing of winning the road games off the top, and I think you guys have one of the better road records in the league since you came here. What goes into being a successful team consistently on the road? Yeah,
I think it's always going to be hard, especially, we really kind of controlled. Obviously the early turnover was very, it was catastrophic early in the game when you're trying to really start fast. You're trying to win the turnover battle, and you kind of, have 2 X's in that column pretty quickly of turning the ball over, not getting points off of a significant drive. Defense had gotten a stop. That formula was right in play for us to get off to that good start. And then we were able to kind of recapture the game a little bit. And the noise really wasn't a factor for the better part of the rest of the day until they score 11 points in a very short amount of time to tie it up, and then you're kind of in the hornet's nest at that point, dealing with being on the road in the NFC North, and you've just lost momentum completely. But the resolve and just the next play, kind of whether it was long yardage, get back on track, long yardage plays, a 3rd and long, our guys just kept playing, made plays. The execution was there. We were playing really without our starting left tackle for the game for the better part of it against a good defense. And I just thought guys stepped up across the board. And I think that's really what it is. We've tried to build a system that, although sometimes you're going to run into some circumstances that maybe the pre-snap execution or things aren't what you want when you throw noise and just a different environment into the mix, but we've tried to build a system that can travel and can play, whether it's a completion-based pass game with explosives that we're hunting via the marriage of the run and the pass, or running the football a little bit better this year. I thought our guys up front really answered the bell of really wanting to be about a little bit more about physicality, getting removal up front, handling the movement that has sometimes, been a little bit of a concern for us. I thought they did all those things, and Aaron and Cam didn't have a lot of ops, but had some nice touches as well.
When you talk about building a system that can travel from a passing perspective, what things you prioritize to make sure that can happen? Yeah,
I think you got to have the ability to get the ball out sometimes, throw, either completion base, quick game, rhythm, timing type plays. And I think the ability to use tempo is always a nice mix, especially you get a little later on in the game, depending on what the defensive personnel, whether it's a team that's got a real strong pass rush or strong coverages or a match programmed adjusting. Sometimes that added element of tempo allows us to alleviate some of that while still having a good chunk of our offense at our disposal. And then I think it's just a constant layer of getting drives going, getting some significant gains without going backwards. I still thought there were some times yesterday where we could have been a little cleaner, even off of the long Jordan catch to start the second half. We have a little miscommunication and cut a guy free, trying to run a wide zone, and then we take a sack, and we're in the red zone and out of the red zone in a matter of 2 plays that just can't happen. So that's kind of where we got to get to from a standpoint of just 60 minutes of execution. But I thought, as a whole, against a defense that really hadn't given up a ton this year from a yardage standpoint, they were really good on third down, really good in the red zone, and we were able to do enough to win the game against a good defense.
And on the flip side, what are your priorities going into a 3-game homestand as far as you're looking for?
Yeah, I just think, we're getting, Thanksgiving this week and we're getting into December, and it's been a goal of mine to continue. We've been winning. We've been able to overcome the 2-game setback in that 5-day stretch. But I just want to continue to improve. I want to continue to improve. What does our attention to detail look like? Can we overcome whatever things come our way from a standpoint of injury, adversity, or whatever it may be that all teams go through down the stretch of every NFL season? I want our organization, I want our football team, I want everybody to be pushing forward, trying to continue to chase improvement and progression all the way through the end of our season. And that just looks like another good week of preparation, a lot of boring stuff. Preparation, having good game plans, and having players that when they hit the field, they're going to be jacked to be back in front of our fans at US Bank. We know it'll be an unbelievable atmosphere, and we got to give them something to be excited about with our execution and our detail of how we go about the week.
On the weekend, there was a report that the Vikings were one of the likely possibilities for Daniel Jones. I'm not sure how much you can get into him in particular at this point, but just more broadly, is there any inclination to look far ahead at that position, or in the short term for depth at this point in the season? Yeah,
I'm not going to really get into that today, but I will say tons of respect for Daniel Jones as a player and a person. Got to know him through the draft process years ago, and I'm sure now that he's a free agent, and there's probably a ton of league-wide interest in him. Daniel's going to make the decision that's best for him and his career moving forward, and I'm sure he's working through that process right now. But I really can't get into too much about any short-term or long-term. I can just say I've been a fan of Daniel's for a long time, and hope wherever his next stop takes him, it's a good opportunity for him.
And on the other, is there interest or not, or
really not going to get into that at this time.
Kevin, you mentioned Justin's support for teammates like Jordan and TJ. How much awareness or selflessness does it take for him to be that way in a game where he's only catching 2 passes?
Yeah, I think it's the maturity of a guy that. It all comes from a place where he just wants to win. And he knows, whether it's having a 14-point lead in the second half or, when he made maybe the most critical play all day was, his catch in overtime to get, to move the chains and kind of take a chunk of yardage there. And it was clearly they were matching him. They hadn't really matched a lot of guys throughout Coach Eberflus's tenure there, and a lot of coverage plans to him, a lot of opportunities for other guys to make some plays, and they did. But at the same time, I love the way Justin handles himself. I love the way he prides himself on his leadership and being a captain. And it's about going 1-0 yesterday in Chicago. But I do feel a responsibility to always let him feel that he's impacting the game. And it's easy for me to say, hey, you drew some penalties and you made a couple big catches, but the actual reality of making plays and the energy and the igniter that he is for our whole team is still a very important thing for sure, Alec.
The 13 where Aaron Jones has the 14-yard catch.
Yeah.
Is that another example of Justin affecting a coverage? Because it looked like a linebacker. I mean, there's nobody going across the middle. I mean, the linebacker seems to be going toward Justin.
Yeah. Well, no, I think they're aware of where he is as the, he's not really the single receiver because Aaron's on the same side as him, but they're aware of the type of things he does from that spot. If he was open, we were going to throw him the ball. And if he did take coverage, we had a pretty simple kind of long handoff type throw that we could get some blockers out in front of Aaron and let him get the first down. So I think it was kind of a game where it felt like the ebbs and flows, like we had some success on those 3rd and longs. I thought Nick, for the second time this year, there is other eligibles available to him than Aaron Jones, but I thought just the comfort of having a guy that can just go in there now 2 separate times on 3rd down for his first play of the game. I mean, it's pretty rare, and you guys can tell by the plays that I call when he goes in. I'm not There's no ounce of, hey, let's just, punt this thing away and move on. We're going to try to get the first down. And I didn't know at that time if Sam would come back in the game. So I was locking into the mentality we were going to go move the ball and get points, and Nick was going to take us down the field. So I thought it was great execution. I want to, you got to highlight those guys out in front, Trent, TJ, Jordan. Seemed like we had, it was just a great example of a tough spot, 3rd and 13. Kind of critical time in the game, and those guys, they're not getting the ball, they're not catching their 100 yards that they both had. Trent comes in there and plays his role beautifully. The execution for something that we really just put in last week in the game week couldn't have been better. And then getting the ball to Aaron Jones in space is a big time plus. So thought it was a big moment in the game.
Naylor's touchdown. I mean, looks like there's a third guy. Johnson is sort of leaning toward Jefferson.
Yeah.
I mean, if that's working, and I know you want to get him involved, but if that's working, how do you balance, like, hey, Justin, this is working, and if it happens again next week, I mean, how do you balance that?
Yeah, it's a great question, and that's where you wish you had 100 plays in every game, and we were just holding up boards on the sideline going as fast as we could, because I would take a few extra snaps to be able to have a few more footballs to spread around. But I'm glad you mentioned that Jalen Naylor touchdown, because, that's everybody's seen us in the red zone and how we like to get Justin involved down there, and the way it plays out with basically a 2-deep look, even down there that tight, a half-field safety look down there where he's able to occupy space in the back of the end zone that forces a cloud corner in Jalen Johnson to have to kind of play both. And Sam, I thought it was a pretty high-level football play for how quickly we call it a low-high-low type of read, for him to do it in the rhythm he did and give Speedy the maximum amount of chances to turn and get that ball in there. Didn't love the reach for the pylon. Life flashed before my eyes there a little bit, but just the competitive nature. And then you turn on the tape, and who's the most excited about it? Justin, when he sees that Speedy scored. So definitely not something that I can allow to be an every week thing. But at the same time, I think there's the way Sam's playing and making great decisions with the ball. We were explosive, yet there wasn't a ton of plays where you felt like we were susceptible to turning the football over. And that means he's going to the right spots. And there were still some competitive plays in there for sure, especially trying to get the ball to Justin. And would have loved to have, the OPI call that took his touchdown off the board. It was a good call. It was exactly what they called, but a little cleaner execution there. Maybe we get him in there and everybody's happy today, but we'll save that for this next week.
Kevin, you've talked a lot about how teams cover Justin unlike they cover anybody. Do you think that will continue if guys like Jordan, TJ, Aaron continue to pop off, or will it always be force other people to beat us? Yeah,
well, the other thing, too, is when, in a lot of ways, when you're doing those things, you're not pressuring either. You're sending 4, and the coverage plan is clearly, there's an identity to rush and coverage being married together, but still, you're sending 4, and you're playing with 7 or sometimes 8 in the back end, and when you've allowed Sam to get in a rhythm and feel protected, or even when we've had 4-man rush, give us a little push like Tennessee, Sam's been able to, create some things off schedule. He's been able to move off the spot and still attack the defense. So I know, I kind of always, that's the way I self-scout. I kind of watch everything through the lens of, what are they watching? What are they thinking? How are they seeing it? We're going to play that team again in a few weeks, and we've got to be ready for them to make some adjustments if they want to, or if they want to play the same game plan, we've got to be ready to still execute and get the same level of production.
Time for 2 more questions, guys.
Bernard sack in overtime, and how was that in swaying momentum back to you after?
Yeah, that was, just a perfect clip of play style being effort, strain, finish, regardless. He was double teamed on the play. He's working like crazy. And, they were trying to maybe get the ball down the field a little bit there. And he just kept straining, kept playing, every moment, every blade of grass, everything mattered. And then to get him on the ground, you guys saw how hard, even when we had some guys that had some free runs at him. He's still a very difficult player to get on the ground and not allow him to eventually, create something by attacking outside the pocket. So I thought it was a massive, massive play, and he had a phenomenal game yesterday. He really did.
How do you evaluate Reisner at his new position through 2?
Yeah, I thought, he was absolutely part of the, kind of the play style that I saw out of that interior in this game. I thought, from Tennessee to yesterday, which is to be expected with a player Dalton's caliber, there was some improvement there for sure, and just some more comfort. I mean, the guy didn't get any preseason time. We've been ramping him up until we decided to make the move. And, I thought he did a lot of good things against Tennessee and then improved on that. So excited about where Dalton is. And I think you're feeling kind of that veteran presence in there with Garrett, Blake, B.O., and then, how about Quest stepping in for Cam and, allowing us to have over 450 yards of offense is a pretty special day for those guys up front. Consistency is the truest measure of performance. I'm going to challenge those guys. I want to see the same thing each and every week, and it's going to be a huge part of our team's ability to have success. Thank you.
Hey, that's it. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. A very jovial, festive day after the game news conference. Very proud of the club, and I don't blame them as they come back after, as the late Denny Green once said, the Bears are who we thought we were, and we almost let them off the hook. Stations, closed circuit stations all along the Common Man Radio Network. We're going to straddle the 45, so our next break will be right around the 45-minute mark. It tend to be, if you are an enterprising young reporter or middle-aged reporter, old reporter, or you are the sports editor and you're responsible for giving people assignments, do you send a reporter down to Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport for incoming New York flights? Or do you think, well, Ziggy's going to send them the private jet, so you go to Holman Field in St. Paul and wait for the private jet of the Vikings to come in
I'm
with
actually
Daniel Jones?
I'm more of a new age editor, so I don't do the old school, let's just send someone to the airport. There's flight tracker apps where you can see what airplanes are coming from which airport, and you can track it. And then you figure out where to go.
Well, that's only if they do use the private jet. But if they decide to use because I don't think you can get an itinerary of the people on the flight. I don't think you can get, what is that called? A flight manifesto? No. In other words, if they do say to Danny Jones, we love you, but you're flying commercial and it ain't first class. Matter of fact, you might have to ride in a pet crate. You might have to howl for an hour before they change your water dish, but so I think you still have to maybe send someone down, unless you see that you can track the will flight Minneapolis to New York and back. And I think he's still in New York. I don't know. Maybe Danny.
Where's he originally from?
Well, that's it. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe Danny Jones is somewhere else. It does sound like the Vikings
went to Duke.
It does sound like the Vikings are interested just by the response from the head coach, and maybe not. I mean, I guess that's the response you would give. He was asked because Daniel Jones, benched. Asked for his release from the Giants. They granted him that. It was either on Thursday or Friday of last week. If I understand it correctly, Teneby, if anybody does, now that he's been released, anybody that signs him, they only got to pay him $300,000 or $400,000, I think, is all they got to pay him. And then if they do not sign him long term, I think they get a compensatory.
They can, depending on how much he makes in the offseason. Which, as a quarterback, even a backup, you can make a decent amount of money.
So a lot of people are thinking that there will be teams that are interested in Daniel Jones, and I think you may have somebody sent me a link.
By the way, he's from Charlotte.
Okay. So maybe,
and he went to Duke.
Maybe check flights out of Charlotte. Yeah. If the Wilf,
that's a Delta hub.
And what you need to but again, if we're not looking for Delta, now,
sure.
I mean, because there's probably flights coming from Charlotte to Minneapolis. We won't know if he's on that flight unless we go to St. Paul, Minneapolis-St. Paul International, and have him off. Every private jet has a number on the back of their wing, on the back of their not the wing. What is it called on the back?
Tail?
The tail. There. Thank you very much. So we need to know the Wilf's flight tail number on their plane. That's where you check to see if anything is going from Minneapolis to Carolina and back, or if it's going directly to New York.
Would we really send a private jet for a backup quarterback?
Well, that's what I just said.
Yeah.
I said I don't. I kind of just did that bit.
Yeah.
So If I think somebody sent me, I don't know if it was you, but somebody sent me a link to a Schefter text, or he said the two teams that he thought would be most interested would be the Vikings and
Ravens.
Ravens would be the two that would be the most interested. And I guess the logic being, if your number one were to go down, which would be Sam Darnold in our case and Lamar Jackson in Baltimore's, you'd want Danny Jones as your backup quarterback. Because I guess Schefter and others feel that Jones would be a better option than Nick Mullins, or I don't know who the backup with the Ravens is right now. I have no idea.
I think it's Joe Johnson.
Joe Johnson. Do we really think Danny Jones would be a better option than Nick Mullins? When you take the other things into consideration, the cheap paycheck and the possibility of compensatory pick, but if Darnold were to go down, I think I'd rather have Nick Mullins, to be honest with you. I know that Jones had a nice stretch, when they went to the playoffs that year, but there's a reason Danny Jones is available, because he just hasn't lived up to expectations. I think it was, what's that liner that says Common? Who wants Common? Don't we play a liner like
boring.
that? Yeah. Daniel Jones? Who wants Daniel Jones? Daniel Jones is awful. And the coach's response might lead you to believe, well, they must have interest in him if he's not saying anything. I just don't think they want to tip their hand. Or you don't want to say, no, we have no interest, or we'd love to have him. You're not going to say that. So you're going to say, I'm not getting into it right now. Tenneby, you're extended family member.
Mm-hmm.
You're master control supervisor. You follow the club. A two-part question. Would you be interested in Danny Jones under the circumstances? And do you think the Vikings are interested in Danny Jones? First of all, you and then the Vikings. What do you think?
I'm not interested in him being a future face of the franchise in any way, shape, or form. Would I rather have him over Nick Mullins? Yes.
Okay.
Do I think the Vikings are interested for that very reason? They know what they have in Nick Mullins, and I know he's come in and made 2 plays the last 2 weeks off the bench, ice cold, and moved the chains for you. But they know what they have in Nick Mullins. They think they have a team that could contend to get to the big game. And if something were to happen to Sam Darnold, not saying Daniel Jones is some super reliable option, but I think
you like him better than Mullins.
I'd rather have him than Mullins. Okay. And then I do think the other side of it that no one is talking about enough, and you mentioned it, is Kwesi has 1 first-round pick next year. He has 2 fifths.
Yeah.
And maybe a compensatory 3rd.
That's interesting.
He has given away 2 drafts for J.J. McCarthy and Dallas Turner.
That's interesting.
So if you can bring in Daniel Jones, who would be an upgrade at backup quarterback, he's just temporary. He's insurance. He's Sam Darnold insurance. He gets hurt. And he goes somewhere else in free agency, maybe makes $10 million somewhere else, and you get a compensatory pick. Seems like a smart move to me. So given his lack of draft picks, I do think he will be interested. And I think why KOC is not talking about it is because they are interested and they are negotiating as we speak.
Yeah. I think you might be right, but I think he wouldn't say either way, because if you say, we have no interest in him, I don't think you'd say that, and you would also not want to say you have interest. But I think you're right. I think they probably are exploring it as we speak. Do we give him the Favre treatment? Do we send players down and that whole thing, or is it?
Do we know anybody who knows them? That's played with them.
Yeah. Do we know? Do we have any indication?
Any indication?
I don't know. We're straddling the 45. We'll break now as we go into break. Tenneby has what we call Wild Today.
Yeah, this is Wild Today, brought to you by Jim Beam, the official bourbon of the Minnesota Wild. The 2 teams with the best records in the National Hockey League meet tonight as your Minnesota Wild host the Winnipeg Jets at XL Energy Center. The Jets lost just their 4th game of the season Saturday in a 4-1 loss at Nashville. Wild coming off a 3-2 shootout loss Saturday at Calgary, though they played that game without Kirill Kaprizov, who suffered a lower body injury in Edmonton. Good news, though, the injury is not considered to be severe, and he skated this morning, so he is listed as a game-time decision before tonight's game. The Wild have already played the Winnipeg Jets. Their first meeting was back on October 13th in Winnipeg. Wild lost that one 2-1 in overtime. Wild and Jets tonight, 7 o'clock at XL Energy Center. Of course, you can hear that game right here on The Fan. That was Wild Today, brought to you by Jim Beam, a crowd pleaser since 1795.
I like this.
Hey, want to chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN program? Make your voice heard on the Brad, Sean, Brian text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard message and data rates apply.
Kind of bouncy, kind of happy, kind of a nice song for a Monday overtime win. The Bears, who we thought we were, we almost let them off the hook. The Bears were who we thought they were, and we almost let them off the hook. The more I'm thinking about it, Tenneby, I think you're right. I think they are negotiating with Sammy Darnold right now as we speak. And
Daniel Jones.
Yeah, Daniel Jones. What did I say?
You said Sam Darnold.
And here's, for me, the reason why I'm convinced. What's KOC's claim to fame? He's a quarterback whisperer.
Yes.
So remember when they signed Sam Darnold? I'll never forget it in the news conference. Somebody asked him, "Can you get more out of Sam Darnold?" I said, "Yeah, sure I can. I'm KOC. I'm quarterback whisperer. I'm sure and he has gotten more to Sam Darnold than anybody's ever gotten. Is it all KOC? Is it any KOC? Somewhere in between. Some of it's weapons, but a lot of it does have to do with the way the quarterback. If you believe that the coach, it's all about synchronizing your eyes and your feet. And when Sam does that, look at the last 2 weeks, Tenneby. I'm assuming his eyes and his feet have been synchronized, because he has not thrown an interception in 2 weeks, and he's had 2 quality football games. He still makes an errant throw here or that. What quarterback does it? You can't be perfect. Well, unless you're Jared Goff. He occasionally gets a 153.8 quarterback rating, or is it 158.3? Whatever an exact quarterback rating is. But don't scoff at Goff, Tenneby. Don't scoff at Goff. I just thought of that one. Half second. But you have a coach who's probably thinking, well, I could milk plenty out of Danny Jones. If we get Danny Jones, I can work with him when I have moments. And then if we have to play him, let's say, because I think you're right. They know what they got with Mullins. And they probably feel there's more upside with the Danny Jones than there is in Nick Mullins. I'm sure the quarterback whisperer thinks, you give me a couple of weeks with this kid and I can get his eyes and his feet synchronized. That's his only issue. And we could get some good quarterback play out of a guy that was highly regarded when he was first drafted by the Giants several years ago. I think he was 6th pick overall. You talked about the Brad, John, Brian KFAN text line. By the way, we're broadcasting live from the 651 Carpets Plus studios. They are home of the next day install. They've carpeted my entire main level, and I'm delighted with the workmanship and the product. That's 651carpetsplus.com, home of the next day install. We also have our KFAN Talkback. You go to the iHeartRadio app, you search for The Fan, you find the microphone icon in the corner of the screen, you tap it, you got 30 seconds or less to deliver us an audio message. Let's see what the people have to say to the common man today here on the Grum.
Cliff Novy, Bellevue, Nebraska. Paul, do you think on that 4th down, do you think Sam Darnold could have ran for that first down when he threw the incompletion around the 35 to the other teams?
That's not the one I wanted to play. I was setting it up for this one.
Hey, Paul. Hey, Nordo. John Miller from Carlisle, Pennsylvania here. Just wanted to check in and let you know that there is one guy that does not get enough credit, in my opinion, and that's you, Mr. Allen. Like the lady at the horse track, I fell in love with this team because of the color of the horse. Randy Moss and Chris Carter didn't hurt, but it's your calls that keep me coming back week in and week out. You do such a phenomenal job with the play-by-play. Please keep up the good work. We love you.
Oh. Now, somebody must have something to say to the common man. Let's try this one.
Skull from Arizona. PA, if they ever have a Vince Lombardi trophy for sports announcers, I hope it is a bust of the legendary Paul Allen, because you are the best announcer the world has ever seen. And Pete Bursage, you are right there with him, my man. You guys are amazing. I love listening to you guys broadcast the Vikings game. Skol Vikes, Super Bowl, baby.
Oh.
I don't know what to say. I never get talkbacks that.
Tell you how great you are?
No.
I get why he has an ego now. It makes sense.
Hey, Paul. Hey, Nordo. John Miller from Carlisle, Pennsylvania here. Just wanted to check in and let you know that there is one guy that does not get enough credit, in my opinion, and that's you, Mr. Allen. Like the lady at the horse track, I fell in love with this team because of the color of the horse. Randy Moss and Chris Carter didn't hurt, but it's your calls that keep me coming back week in and week out. You do such a phenomenal job with the play-by-play. Please keep up the good work. We love you.
I'd have given up on the Vikings years ago, but then I think they're not very good, but boy, that Paul Allen can call a losing team like nobody else can. I'm going back game after game. And there's this one. Whoops. This is worth repeating.
Skol from Arizona. PA, if they ever have a Vince Lombardi trophy for sports announcers, I hope it is a bust of the legendary Paul Allen, because you are the best announcer the world has ever seen. And Pete Bursage, you are right there with him, my man. You guys are amazing. I love listening to you guys broadcast the Vikings game. Skol Vikes, Super Bowl, baby.
St. Detroit, this is the Super Bowl, man. No. Welcome back to the spotlight, young man.
Best announcer the world has ever seen.
He's
JJ.
How can you argue with those? The national treasure.
Well, yesterday it was he's Showtime.
Oh, is that what it was?
Yeah, he changed it yesterday.
And who's Showtime? Addison?
No, that's Aaron Jones.
Oh. When did he become Showtime?
It's his nickname.
I had no idea. How long has he had that nickname?
I don't know.
Did PA bestow it upon him, or is that?
No.
Oh.
I think that's like his Twitter handle.
Showtime. We'll pause and come back. I want to talk college football, some Wild, some Wolves, and more Viking talk. And I want to talk about there's a bowl game tonight, Teneby. We'll get to that other side of the break. Common Man program on the Fan.